In our modern world, air travel has become an essential means of reaching every corner of the globe, and at any given moment, the skies above us host a remarkable count of 8,000 to 13,000 airplanes. Air travel's popularity is both in part due to efficiency and reasonable cost, but most of all, flying is unequivocally the safest form of travel. According to research conducted by Harvard University, flying in regions such as the US, Europe and Australia is considerably safer than driving a car. The likelihood of experiencing an accident during a flight stands at a mere 1 in 1.2 million, with the chance of such an incident proving fatal being just 1 in 11 million. Nonetheless, despite these statistics, there have been a multitude of accidents that have tragically claimed the lives of thousands. The highest recorded number of fatalities linked to a single airline within a year happened in 2014. During this fatal year, 537 individuals lost their lives as a result of the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, presumably in the Indian Ocean, and the subsequent crash of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over eastern Ukraine 4 months later. In terms of history's gravest aviation catastrophe in terms of fatalities, that unfortunate distinction dates back to 1977. The Tenerife airport disaster saw the loss of 583 lives when two Boeing 747s collided on the runway at Los Rodeos Airport on the Spanish island of Tenerife. The most substantial instance of fatalities stemming from a mid-air collision occurred during the Chakri-Dadri mid-air collision on November 12, 1996. It was in the air about 100 kilometers west of Delhi that a Saudi Arabian Airlines Boeing 747-100B on its route from Delhi to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, collided with a Kazakhstan Airlines Ilyushin 76, travelling from Chimkent, Kazakhstan to Delhi. This tragic event claimed the lives of all 349 individuals on board both aircraft. Among the most infamous plane crashes is, undoubtedly, the intentional crashes of American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175 into the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. This attack resulted in the loss of 2,606 lives on the ground, alongside the deaths of 157 individuals aboard the flights. But with all this death, it raises a simple question. Who was the first airplane crash victim? American Thomas Etholin Selfridge holds the unfortunate distinction of being the first person to lose his life in an airplane crash. Additionally, as a first lieutenant in the US Army, he became the first active duty member of the US military to die in a crash while on duty. Tragically, Selfridge met his untimely demise as a passenger aboard a Wright Flyer during a demonstration flight piloted by none other than Orville Wright. Born on the 8th of February 1882 in San Francisco, California, Thomas Etholin Selfridge hailed from a distinguished naval lineage. He was the nephew of a Rear Admiral Thomas Oliver Selfridge Jr., whose father was also a Rear Admiral, him of course being Thomas Oliver Selfridge Sr. In 1903, Selfridge graduated from the esteemed United States Military Academy, widely known as West Point, and received his commission in the Artillery Corps. Ranking 31st in a class of 96, he shared his alma mater with the future General of the Army for the United States Douglas MacArthur, who ranked top of the class. During the devastating San Francisco earthquake of April 18, 1906, Selfridge was stationed at the Presidio of San Francisco. In the aftermath of the catastrophe, his unit actively participated in search and rescue missions along with cleanup operations. In 1907, he received an assignment to the Aeronautical Division of the US Signal Corps stationed at Fort Myer, Virginia. There, he underwent training in piloting a dirigible, a type of aircraft that can navigate through the air under its own power and is lighter than air. Simultaneously, Selfridge assumed the role of the United States government representative to the Aerial Experiment Association, or AEA. The AEA, chaired by the renowned Alexander Graham Bell, credited with inventing the first practical telephone, enlisted Selfridge as its first secretary. On December 6, 1907, Selfridge underwent his inaugural flight aboard Bell's innovative tetrahedral kite named a Cygnet, comprising an impressive 3,393 winged cells. This remarkable flight carried him 168 feet above Bras d'Or Lake in Nova Scotia, Canada, where he soared for a duration of 7 minutes. This remarkable feat marked the first documented passenger flight aboard any heavier-than-air aircraft in Canada. Additionally, Selfridge piloted another aircraft constructed by Canadian engineer Frederick W. Baldwin, who served as the manager of Graham Bell Laboratories. This aircraft gracefully hovered 3 feet above the ground, gliding a distance of about 100 feet. Selfridge also undertook the design of Red Wing, the AEA's inaugural powered aircraft. On March 12, 1908, piloted by Frederick W. Baldwin, the Red Wing raced above the frozen expanse of Cooker Lake near Hammondsport, New York, on runners, achieving a flight distance of 318 feet before an unfortunate crash. Both the aircraft and the pilot would remain unharmed, but regrettably, the Red Wing was fatally damaged in its second flight on March 17, 19, 1908, leaving only the engine salvageable. On May 19, 1908, Selfridge became the first US military officer to independently pilot a modern aircraft. Navigating the AEA's newest creation, the White Wing, he made an impressive 100-foot solo flight on his first attempt and extended it to 200 feet on his second. From May 19th to August 3rd, Selfridge executed multiple flights at Hammondsport, culminating in a remarkable 1 minute and 30-second flight, reaching an altitude of 75 feet. The following day, his final solo flight covered an impressive distance of 800 yards in just 50 seconds. In August 1908, Selfridge was among the 3 pilots selected for training to operate the Army Dirigible No. 1, which had been acquired by the US Army from American balloonist Thomas Scott Baldwin in July 1908. Selfridge's training companions were Lieutenants Frank P. Lamb and Benjamin Falloy, both of whom would play vital roles in the development of the US Air Force. The plan was for the dirigible to embark on a journey from Fort Omaha, Nebraska to participate in exhibitions at the Missouri State Fair in Sedalia, Missouri, 230 miles away. The craft was to be piloted by Falloy and Selfridge. Meanwhile, the Army had expressed interest in procuring an airplane from the Wright brothers and had arranged trials to take place in September. Intrigued by both heavier than air and lighter than air aircraft, Selfridge sought an appointment and travelled to Fort Myer, Virginia. In September 1908, Orville Wright paid a visit to Fort Myer to showcase the 1908 Wright military flyer to the US Army's Signal Corps Division. During this demonstration on September 17th, Selfridge arranged to accompany Wright as a passenger, with Wright at the controls of the aircraft. On this particular occasion, the flyer carried more weight than ever before, with a combined weight of approximately 320 pounds for both men. As the flyer circled Fort Myer, it completed 4.5 turns at an altitude of 150 feet. However, during the 5th circuit at 5:14 in the afternoon, disaster struck when the right-hand propeller broke, resulting in a loss of thrust. This sudden event caused vibrations, leading the fractured propeller to collide with the guy wire supporting the rear vertical rudder. The impact caused the wire to disengage from its fastening, damaging the propeller beyond repair and tilting the rudder horizontally, sending the flyer into a sharp nosedive. Wright shut off the engine, allowing the aircraft to glide to about 75 feet above the ground, but the flyer ultimately made an unfortunate nose-first impact with the earth. Both men were thrown forward against the remaining wires, with Selfridge tragically colliding with one of the wooden uprights of the aircraft's framework. The impact resulted in a severe fracture at the base of his skull. Following the incident, Selfridge underwent neurosurgery, but unfortunately succumbed to his injuries 3 hours later, never regaining consciousness. At the time of his passing, Selfridge was just 26 years old. Wright also suffered significant injuries in the crash, including a broken left femur, multiple broken ribs, and damage to his hip. As a result, he was hospitalised for a total of 7 weeks. In a letter to his brother Wilbur Wright, Orville later recounted the tragic accident in detail. On the 4th round, everything seemingly working much better and smoother than any former flight, I started on a larger circuit with less abrupt turns. It was on the very first slow turn that the trouble began. A hurried glance behind revealed nothing wrong, but I decided to shut off the power and descend as soon as the machine could be faced in a direction where a landing could be made. This decision was hardly reached. In fact, I suppose it was not over 2 or 3 seconds from the time the first taps were heard until 2 big thumps, which gave the machine a terrible shaking, showed that something had broken. The machine suddenly turned to the right, and I immediately shut off the power. Quick as a flash, the machine turned down in front and started straight for the ground. Our course for 50 feet was within a very few degrees of the perpendicular. Lieutenant Selfridge up to this time had not uttered a word, though he took a hasty glance behind when the propeller broke and turned once or twice to look into my face, evidently to see what I thought of the situation. But when the machine turned headfirst for the ground, he exclaimed, "Oh, oh," in an almost inaudible voice. A pre-flight photograph of the flyer reveals that Selfridge was not wearing any headgear, while Wright was only donning a cap. In the aftermath of the tragic crash, as speculation arose that Selfridge might have survived had he been wearing head protection, the first pilots of the US Army were directed to wear substantial and weighty headgear reminiscent of early football helmets. Presently, Thomas Selfridge rests at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, in Section 3, Gravesite 2158, situated adjacent to Joint Base Myer-Henderson Hall. While his final resting place lies in Arlington National Cemetery, Selfridge is also commemorated by Grand Cenotaph in Section 34 of West Point Cemetery. In honor of his contributions and sacrifice, Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Harrison Township, Michigan bears his name. Additionally, in 1965, Thomas Selfridge was posthumously inducted into the esteemed National Aviation Hall of Fame, situated in Dayton, Ohio. This has been me, Jack, and if you're flying right now watching my video, please leave a comment down below.